Hey everybody, Mirza Mujic from Mujic Consulting here. Today we have with us Sofie Sandell. Sofie Sandell is an author, entrepreneur, and a speaker, and she has written a book about digital leadership. Actually, one of the first ones that did that. So today we're gonna talk about digital leadership and challenges with a leadership role. So thank you for being here with me, Sofia.
Thank you. Yeah, it's good to be here. I think I had my microphone on mute, but now I'm here again.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you work with, so our viewers can know what you stand for and what you work with?
Yeah, of course. Well, I've been. I can start to tell everybody who wonder what kind of accent I have. I'm Swedish. I grew up in Sweden, and I spent about the last 10 years in London working there. And my career started working with some large, quite big companies with certification. Then I moved into management consultancy and standardization. And then 2009, in 2008, I decided that I should really work with digital transformation somehow. This thing with YouTube and Facebook is really interesting. And I was employed by a large, what do you call it, like a large publisher in London. And I got the first job as their social media manager and e-commerce manager. So it was a quite, I think, unique opportunity. And while working there, I was one of the first people with experience in this field. I became a speaker and teacher and educator. So I spent the last 4 years speaking professionally about social media and digital leadership and how the world is changing. And social media moves fast. So all my talks are customized for the people I'm speaking in front of. So I used to have, sometimes I speak for teenagers and talk about how to use social media well, maybe for their career or keeping in touch with their friends. And sometimes it's people who are maybe a little bit more senior and talk about the challenges that it means for society. So if I would like to give myself a title, it's hard, but I worked for myself for many, many years.
Interesting. You have had several leadership positions in non-governmental organizations and as a professional speaker and educator and teacher, and let's say chief inspirer. Could you tell us what your leadership roles have been and what your role is in your company, Sofie Sandell?
Yeah, well, I think one of my first rules are get the basic rights. Figure out why you do something instead of just doing. My experience from working in e-commerce is that you spend a lot of time doing and figuring out and trying to get new information, but you don't know what to do with it. And I think we need to sometimes sit down and just do things from a new perspective and new angle. So get the basics right has been with me for a long, long time. I'm also quite interested in the Japanese lean philosophy. So we often talk about productivity and efficiency. And I think we are quite often not really sure what we mean with this. What does it mean to be productive? And what does it mean to be efficient? So many people are getting, in English you say brownie points, little gold star, by doing a lot of things, but maybe not knowing why they're doing those things. And if you're working in large projects and want to have reports on a regular basis, for instance, it's quite common. You would like some data presented for you. Why do you need this data? I spent 8 hours every Monday working in a company trying to pull out data that we actually never used. So my philosophy is do we really need this? Is this really giving us any kind of extra information to make any different decisions?
Interesting. We're going to talk about digital leadership. So one of your expertise is digital leadership, where you teach this to companies. And you have also written the book, Digital Leadership, How Creativity in Business Can Propel Your Brand and Boost Your Results.
Yes.
So could you tell us, tell me and tell the audience, what is the digital leadership?
Yeah, of course. Well, I started to talk about this in 2011, 2012. And it was when I wrote my book in 2012, and I had my publisher, he said, well, Sofie, this is really about digital leadership, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, it is. But I never defined it. But when I speak, I define it. And I say, everyone can become a leader. Everyone can learn more about digital, and everyone can become a digital leader. And it doesn't matter what kind of background you have. I have a background in marketing and sales, because that's like where my career led me. But you can be a technical person and start to develop your understanding for the connected world in different ways. You can have, totally different area, but still you need to know how everybody are using all digital tools. And while you start to develop your own understanding of how those inventions are affecting us, you are developing your digital leadership skills.
Interesting. What is interesting with digital leadership is that a lot of companies use it, and as a leader, how can, for example, a leader use digital leadership in a company?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's good for your planning for the future, because there are so many opportunities available. And you have the cloud, you have analytics, you have big data, you have social media, Internet of Things, all different kind of information systems connected to each other. And they're going to affect you. Whatever you do, it's going to affect you. And every leader, or everyone, I think, who are looking at themselves as a leader in the modern world, they need to analyze and see what's available and get a little bit of understanding themselves. You don't have to be an expert in everything, but you need to know about the cloud. You need to know about analytics. You need to know about what the Internet of Things are doing to society. Everything is going to be connected soon. We're just in the beginning. And also another thing I think is very important is that whatever we are doing, we are somehow promoting what we are affiliated with. And every employee in an organization is somehow working with you, and they are all part of your digital marketing team. And I can tell you an example. I was invited to talk at the conference in the Middle East, and I looked at the company's website, and none of their employees were on LinkedIn or Twitter. And I just thought, do they really exist? So we are defining our existence by doing things online.
I see. So it's very important for leaders and companies to be at the internet, social media, because that is important to reach out to people, maybe.
Of course it is. Of course it is. Who doesn't use information from the internet? And we are like, everyone are connected somehow. And I was looking at, when I was at home in my parents' house this Christmas, I found my old address book. That's my old social media. We are using it in a way to connect. And Facebook, for instance, is so important for our infrastructure. There are so many services you cannot access without having a Facebook account. So
yeah, that's true. And Facebook can also be used for business, not just private life. I see a lot of companies actually have their own Facebook page, which is getting more and more common, actually.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. How should leaders use digital marketing? You said a little bit about it, but how can they use it to promote their company and generally maybe promote the right talents, for example?
Yeah, it's important. Like, just a general thought about that is that leaders, they want to do things and try out new things first. And I think an asset for a leader is to be good at curating information. And I know some politicians in the UK that are very good at curating information from what was said in a meeting. And sometimes they do that by curating the different tweets together. And then they share that with their community. And I think that's a good way of making it a bit more democratic, to share what was said inside a meeting that with people who were not there. So sharing is a big thing. And then also we live in a world with too much information. It's just like the amount of information is doubling all the time. I think maybe every 6 months we have the double amount of data that we had 6 months before. And we're pushing so much out. So what we push out has to be really clear. And that's why leaders need to learn about branding, because if your brand is not really clear, you know, I think the very most basic course in marketing and branding is that a company that's famous for something, they're probably famous for about 3 or 4 things. You know, we associate certain brands with certain characteristics. So what you push out and how you push it out and how innovative you are when you push it out is going to determine whether people are paying attention or not. And it's so many initiatives and everybody wants to be online. So I don't know how many meaningless websites are set up every year, but it's probably 1 million or 2. And do you want to be one of those meaningful websites? Then you have to do some thinking.
Interesting. But why is digital leadership and digital marketing so important for leaders and organizations?
Yeah, everybody spends so much time online. We spend on average, I know in Sweden for sure, that you spend on average between 6 and 8 hours per week online. And even people who are, you know, you wouldn't think maybe about them as being super active online, but women over 70 years old are spending 4 or 5 hours per week online in Sweden. So that's where people hang out. If you want to reach out with a message somewhere, you need to learn more about digital marketing. You need to learn more about how people are using it. And one of the best lessons you can have is to build a good relationship with different users. You know, some people who use it every now and then, some people who use social media all the time, and watch what they're doing. You know, maybe, you know, ask kindly, can I just have a look at your smartphone and see what you're doing? I was following a little girl. She's only 7 years old, but when she was out playing Pokemon Go, I'm not a Pokemon Go player. I will never play it, I think. But it was interesting to see how she used it and what was driving her to be on this hunt.
I see.
So, yeah.
The connection between leadership and digital stress, that's a very important topic to talk about. But what is that connection?
Yeah, well, I started to talk about this like 3 years ago. And I was like pushing out, I was like the happy speaker, being evangelistic about social media and, oh, yes, everybody should use it. And then I said, well, actually, we should use it, but we should restrict it slightly. And it has to do with the amount of information you would like to get into your life. And you would never be able to subscribe to 20 magazines each month and get them through the post into your door. And it's the same thing with our online life. We need to sort of value a few of these subscriptions and learn how to navigate away from things that are not good for us. So that's one aspect. It's like too much going on there. And then you have internally, I used to work for ITV Online. It's a large broadcaster in the UK. And there were so many stupid systems that we had to try to get to work together. And it was hard. First of all, you have logins for different kind of, what do you call it, applications and back-end in systems. And with too many of those, you just get inefficient. And you lose your passwords and things are not working and things are not synchronized. And then in combination with too much information floating around in the organization, it's not very productive. And digital stress, one of the most common causes to it is poor leadership. because poor leaders, they don't have meetings, they are ignorant with their communication, they think everybody should just understand what they say without them explaining, they're not good educators, and that creates like stressful situations. I've had, like in my life, I had some amazing leaders, I had some very poor leaders, and we all go through life, I think, with these different kind of experience. Maybe a few lucky would have only good leaders. Well, good for them. But most of us will have some crap leaders who are ignorant to lots of different people needs. And we need to know that the work we're doing is meaningful. And you create a meaningful workplace by being good at communication and setting goals and making people feel involved. So we're probably going to discuss this later, like the biggest challenge for leaders, you know, how do you get people to feel involved and important?
That's very interesting discussion and a question to answer, and you got a lot of good points. But in terms of your position as a leader, your past positions as a leader in organizations, what kind of tools do you as a leader use to achieve the common goals you set for the organization?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I would recommend everyone who has a leadership position to get at least 10 different mentors. You know, search your network and get people to mentor you and help you, because everyone has a leadership book inside them. They don't know it, but you have to talk to them. And I learned so much from my mentors, and it's just like a cup of coffee. Some people you talk to over Skype, some people you learn from what they've written. But so for leaders today, like tools, this is both for things like happen in real life and online. So in real life, I think it's very important to have regular meetings. And I love the story of a teacher who started every Monday morning with setting goals for her class. And then in the end of the week, she evaluated them. And that's just describing how one of my old teams worked together. We set our goal on Monday and we evaluated them next Monday. So we had that on an ongoing basis. And everyone had the chance to ask for help. And I think that's so important. If you have, I'm quite bad at asking for help in public, but in private, like in small groups, I find it quite easy to ask for help. And like, I don't know how to do this. I need help. And maybe the people in the room don't know how to help you, but others do.
That's a very good point, actually. I think a lot of us really just want to do things on our own.
Yeah.
You're very, very highly ambitious, and you're very self-gone person. You will probably have a little bit difficulty with asking for help. But you learn most actually by asking people for help for things you don't know or have education or have experience with.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, so, and then you have like, some people like the sort of the smart goals. I hate smart goals. I want to have like really complex goals. I think that's more inspiring for me. And I think when it comes to leadership and like how you work well with people, it's so much two-way communication, maybe 4-way, 5-way communication if you're more people working together. And it's very hard to set goals and ask other people to follow these goals if they were not involved from the beginning. So whenever I've been working on a new project, I want us to sit down and set the goals together. And I also want people to go home and think about the goals and how they can expand their goals. Because then they will probably set bigger goals than you could ever expect. Because if you want people to set goals and stress them, maybe they are that kind of person who would like to go home and think about it for 2 days. They should be able to do that. I've often seen quite a few companies setting goals, and it's really like an intimidating. inhuman experience, but like make goal setting something human and be brave. You can do so much more if you work well together than you're like when you're not good at cooperating and working at things together. And also another thing, like I cannot stop thinking about this, it has to do with digital stress, and it's about making things manageable and don't set too much pressure on certain things. Because digital development is going to go on forever, and digital leadership is going to stay. It's just going to be here with us for the rest of our lives. And I'm a big enthusiastic person, but I'm also skeptic. I'm also like, maybe we should not do anything for like a month. Maybe that's better, to don't focus on anything new, just focus on what we're doing now and the past. Learn more about the branding strategies, so when we're communicating outwards, what the brand is really about. So yeah, I think that's like some of the things: goal setting, setting up, being asking for help, working well together. Think about your brand. Maybe stand still for a while. It's good tips. I've done that several times, both when I worked in a corporate world and working for myself. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't be stressed about moving forward or like expanding or anything like that. You can just, maybe let things brew for a while.
Good advice so far. Let us talk about the leadership role. We know that leadership role has some disadvantages and also some benefits. So could you, based on your experience, give some benefits of being a leader in today's organizations?
Yeah, well, I think it's amazing that you can work together with more people if you are in a leadership position. It's often giving you, especially if you're cross-functional, it gives you insights to lots of different departments and functions. That's amazing. So learning, number one. And then I also think networking is a key thing. When you are, like you and I have been involved with JCI, when you have a leadership hat on and you're maybe a president or something of the Junior Chamber International, it gives you an amazing networking opportunity. I loved it. I'm a member of and I'm a leader of this organization now for 1 year. Would like to do this. It just opened up doors that would never have opened before. And yeah, I would say like one of the things that are not that good with it is that it keeps your brain very busy. You wake up, when you are a committed leader, you are very attached to what you're working on. And it's both good and bad. It's amazing for the brand because you give all the energy to the brand and the people you're working with, but it can also be quite draining. So maybe like, I'm not surprised if anyone who has a heavy workload get a bit burned out every now and then. So watch out for that challenge. And then another thing, which I think it's a disadvantage being a leader, is that you have several people around you who want some of your power. And it can, like I've had some experience working with people who are narcissistic and maybe slightly psychopathic, and when you have them around you, things get messy. So be prepared that every now and then some people are going to let you down hugely, and that's a disadvantage. And it's really, I felt really sad with that. And then I would say that another thing that I've seen as a leader as well is mental illness. And 25% of everyone will suffer from some kind of mental illness every now and then. And I, as a leader, I've been dealing with it a few times as well. So not with myself, but with people I work with, and I help them. And it's both an advantage and a disadvantage because you get very close to a person who is emotionally vulnerable. And it's an honor to help, but it's also quite hard. It takes a lot of energy, mental energy. But I think good leaders, they deal with this. They help people around them. They want to make life okay for everyone who is involved in their organization.
Interesting. I think maybe that's connected with stress or other kind of issues as well in terms of mental illness. because we know that leaders have a lot of responsibility, and that responsibility can be too much for some people if they can't cope it, or they have coping mechanisms, for example.
Yeah.
Just something I was reflecting on your discussion. So, yeah. You talked about disadvantages, so I would say that we move on to communications. Communications is very, very important, I think, not just for a leader, but also for the organization and for the employees. But this question is more about your leadership position. How do you cooperate and communicate with your team?
Yeah, well, I was thinking about like maybe I should take an example from my JCI years here.
Yeah, do that. I also was and still is a member of JCI in Bergen, in Norway. So take an example. That's a very good organization in terms of communication, I think.
Yeah. So I was inspired by a leader who was sending too many emails to me. And I thought to myself, okay, when I'm in a leadership position, I will never send this many emails because people just ignore them. So I had a habit of communicating to my my leadership team every week. And I wrote Sofie's Tuesday email and the date in the subject. So I always call it like Sofie's Tuesday email or Sofie's Wednesday email. So I collected all the information for 1 week into one email. And that was amazing. And people felt as that they were part in the loop because I never excluded them. They were included in all communication all the time. And then there are so many different social media around and there's so many different things happen, but I still think that your personal email inbox is the most important one because we curate it and we value it a lot. So if you use people's inbox with respect, they want to keep you in it. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Very interesting.
Yeah, and then I think another thing, like that's part of sending out information and cooperating. And another thing that I did when I was there, I was how can you say it? Like we have to be proud of what we do. And if the prideness isn't there, if people are not thinking it's enough, it's important enough to sit up all night to discuss a topic, it's hardly not worth doing.
I understand what you mean. It's also maybe interconnected or connected with motivation. If you're not proud of doing something, you can lose motivation then.
Yeah. So think about what makes people proud and how does that work and how does it give people status? So when you work on something, if you give people high status when they work on it, they're going to work harder. And my philosophy has always been like, you need help from lots of different people. You need to be having a good relationship with as many people as possible and make it work so they want to work together with you. And to do that, I think it doesn't come natural for everyone, but luckily for me, I've been quite good at it. But I think it has to do with that I'm like using the activities to create this feeling of satisfaction and proud and meaningfulness together. And another thing I was thinking about is communication and conflicts, because I'm not that scared of conflicts. And leaders has to deal with conflicts. It's just included because we have to make choices, and that's conflicts. We have to deal with people, that's conflicts. We have to deal with new futuristic scenarios, and that's conflicts. And the future doesn't have one defined thing that's going to happen. The future has probably 25 different outcomes that you have to choose from.
That's true.
And every day we are planting like a seed, don't we?
That's also true, I think. And but we also know that communications has some challenges. So I'm thinking as a leader in, let's say, JCI, as we were talking about JCI here, what do you think is challenging in terms of communication as a leader?
Yeah, well, I think it would be luxury if people could read your mind, but they can't. And it has happened to me so many times. It cannot just be random, but we have to remind ourselves every day that people cannot read your thoughts. You have to share, and you have to be able to share your ideas. And we process things differently. We have different learning styles, and it's a combination of things. Like some people need to talk. I'm a talker, I like talking, but then I also like to go home and read, and I like to go home and think, and then I like action. So combining all these elements together is really quite, that's like what you need to do. And
that can be also challenging. There's a lot of aspects you have to. The challenge is maybe to balance those things.
Of course.
Just a reflection on it.
Yeah.
So, but let's move on, because you're talking about conflicts. Before I asked you a question about challenges with communication.
Yeah.
So we know that conflicts is very important in terms of actually learning something. You can actually learn something from the conflicts if you have a different kind of perception of the situation, for example. And my question is, how have you managed and solved your conflicts as an experienced entrepreneur and leader? I assume that you had any kind of conflicts in your career so far.
Of course, many. Well, I'm first, I think I had like an acceptance moment with myself that conflicts is here, and they're gonna stay whether you like it or not. You cannot remove them. It's impossible. And it's like, I'm Swedish, and in Sweden people are really scared of conflicts. They would like to hide away and never have a conflict. And I've been challenging things quite many times, and I think to learn how to handle conflicts, you need to challenge them. You need practical experience. There is no shortcut. And I've been like concerned quite many times, and I've been bringing that up. I've been asking people what's going on, and that might be a little conflict, but it's good to do that. You need practical training. And then when I've been living in the UK for many years and working there, and also worked internationally, and in the UK people think it's awful. They don't want conflicts. So in that way they're quite similar to the Swedes. But I think it's important to remember that don't bring anything up in public. Make it, between four eyes. Don't make people embarrassed, especially if it's international connections. So you need to be quite firm with the person one-to-one. And I've seen this happening in some organizations where people are scared of conflicts and scared of telling a person straight, and they have gone to that person's manager to tell the manager of that person that this person is doing blah, blah, blah. And in every culture, I think that's bad. I think, the more you can talk to a person directly, the better. And for instance, I've been working with some Finnish people, and they were very straight, and they had a saying that they wanted to put the cat on the table. So they put the problem on the table, and then they looked at it from different perspectives, and they tried to come up with a solution. And also, it is possible to get lots of different things done when there is conflicts around. It might be a bit weird for the people who wants to stay outside the conflicts, because, you don't know what it depends on, but it's often power. It's often power and opinions. And some people are very childish. They will never grow up. They will just be the kind of person who wants to be right all the time. And maybe, if you can get these people to maybe not chase status by being right all the time, it might help.
It's a very good point, I think. Also that you can't read the mind of other people, because they have their mind and you have your mind, and you can ask them. You can ask them questions, open questions, if that's appropriate, of course.
Yeah.
And you can also, my experience is that the best way to handle conflict is to take action, actually, to solve it so fast as possible, as necessary it is. Because if you dwell on it or you think too much, it will just escalate to be something even huge.
Yeah.
More problems than a conflict, maybe something huger than that.
Yeah, I have an experience quite recently, and it was something very, oh God, it annoyed me so much. I cannot tell you the example, but something annoyed me, and it annoyed me, and it annoyed me, and I let it go for a few days. And then I had to call my friends. So I called 2 friends that I trust, and I spoke to them. And both of them are quite calm people. They're not like affectionate, like they're not emotional, or they don't make a big drama of nothing. So I picked my mentors, and they just told me, Sophie, you need to do this, but you have to be gentle and kind. Gentle and kind. I was like, yes, okay, I'm going to be gentle and kind. And when I brought up the problem, I was gentle and kind, and the conflict was gone.
Nice. So that's also a good advice, actually, to ask for help.
Yes.
To ask other friends, mentors, people you trust.
It's so many people around you wants to help you, but they never get a chance because you never ask.
Yeah, that's a very good point, I think. Asking is the first step.
Yes.
Very good. So you had a lot of leadership positions in non-governmental organizations.
Yep.
Such as Juno Chamber International. So my question is, could you tell us how you have been leading as a leader in one of your leadership positions you've had?
Yeah, well, I think you lead with your personal energy, you lead with your experiences, you lead by learning, and you lead by developing leaders around you. And I found it very satisfying for myself to see other people step up and do things they've never done before. That's amazing. I also believe in creating good memories together with the group. So like when I've been involved in JCI, I met some people who are like, oh my God, awards doesn't matter. Who cares about awards? And I'm like, well, I'm not really sure which side I stand on. But if you're like applying for an award together with your group that you work with and you win something, you create a common memory and you can brag about it. And when you can feel proud about that memory together with lots of other people, you create a good story that you can forward to other people. I think like when you're involved in a organization such as JCI, you do it in your spare time, so you don't have that much time to actually do things during 1 year. And for me, a lot of things happened a year after for me as a leader, and it was like good discussions with people, meaningful discussions with people about what this is about. And if that is missing, you are maybe not really going deep enough, you're not caring enough. You may just arrange events that are, I don't know, totally out of the mission of the organization. And you get much more on focus if you have those discussions. Why do we do this? And it's about being respectful to the people you have around you. You have no idea who's going to come up with the most beautiful ideas. So I would say it was amazing leadership, what do you call it, like curve for myself, but it was even better when I had time to reflect on it.
Interesting. And we talk a lot about leadership and characteristics of a leader. Yeah. You can see that in research. You can see that with other people that have experience. They talk about this is what kind of leaders you have to be a good leader. So my question is basically, what kind of characteristics should a leader have in an organization?
Yeah.
Or is it even possible to talk about it, or is it just it depends? Yeah. What is your thought about it?
Well, I have to say first, I don't believe in certain characteristics, and I don't believe in certain backgrounds, certain educations, or certain this or that. I'm like, my belief about human beings is that we are okay as we are. You're good as you are, and what matters most is your ability to collaborate and learn together with others. That's my belief. And then, of course, characteristic is important. Like, I am often reminded by some friends that I'm a very learner, but at the same time, I'm scared of learning a few things. So even though I have this in some surroundings, I'm like keen to learn and keen to develop and keen to try new things, but then in other areas I'm like, ooh, I'm not really sure about this. Ooh. So you need to be able to be open for feedback and be reminded that things are possible. And some people say that, the attitude matters most, and other things like, and the entrepreneurial spirit is important. But like, the more I work together with people, I'm not sure, it's so complex. We are so complex as human beings, and we want to sort of draw on our uniqueness. And I'm a keen, I'm quite keen on these things with that. We all have a personal brand, and we all have certain stories that are important for us and definitely have defined who we are. But at the same time, being there, doing your best, and having a team of people, yes, doing their best together, the best they can with the best abilities they have at the moment, can be enough. You don't need like people who had a certain, they have the right kind of attitude. Like, I'm not really a believer in that, I have to say. But I do believe certain personality traits may help with certain things. Like, I've been a public speaker for a few years, and you cannot hate standing on a stage to become a public speaker. So of course it does matter if you in some kind of directions. But at the same time, when I've been working in the corporate life, my corporate life, I was not the best public speaker, because there I felt like pressure on me to deliver something in front of my bosses. When I do public speaking in an organization that I'm not connected to, I don't care about what their bosses think, and I don't care about anyone. I just want to give people a good talk, give away some good content, and that's very different. So yeah, situations can probably matter quite a lot. What else can I say about characteristics? I was thinking about this quite a lot.
I was also thinking about leadership styles. Do you think some certain kind of leadership style is more prevalent or more, let's say, better way to lead than other kind of leadership style? If you understand my question. Yeah.
I think maybe not style, but behavior can be determining your success, and making people feel important, making people be seen, making people feel as their contribution has mattered. That's probably something a leader can do. And when they do that successfully, people do it again. If you forget to reinforce someone, they won't do it. And like another thing that springs to mind is often leadership speakers say that you need people's ideas. The people in your organization is the biggest asset. But at the same time, how many times have not a person in an organization neglected to listen to a person's idea? They said, that will never work. How many times will that person come forward again to share their new great ideas? Well, probably zero. So every small movement will determine what's happening. And I like I said before, like, collaboration is so important. Like, the better we can collaborate, the better. And I wish there was some kind of formula where you could measure collaboration. Not sure there's one now, but you can imagine that the more meetings you have and the better you collaborate in all these meetings, the better the outcome is going to be for the whole.
I'm not sure. But very interesting so far. We know that there are a lot of challenges as a leader. So we have to take up that discussion with what kind of challenges is it for a leader? What do you think is the most challenging for a leader in today's organizations?
Yeah, depending on the industry, of course, but like one that is overflowing all organizations at the moment is big data. How are we going to interpret all this big data? And there are lots of tools being developed at the moment with how to interpret it, which I think is good. And then another thing that I've seen in digital leadership, it's about daring to do mistakes. We are so taught all the time that mistakes are bad, and we are laughing at other people when they make a mistake, and we do it on social media all the time. It's like in us to sort of make fun of people making mistakes, but at the same time, without making a mistake, we're never gonna make any progress. So it's a big challenge. How do you balance that? And then another thing is, like, I met an entrepreneur quite recently, and I was mentoring him a little bit, and he was telling me about big plans and how he wanted to become a more sustainable business, thinking about sustainability and the environment. But he couldn't tell me why. And for me, it was just like, okay, but if you cannot tell me why you want to do this, you have to start to create a story. And leaders need to be good at storytelling, because it's hard to get people's attention, and storytelling is wired into people's mind. So the better you are at storytelling, the better you are convincing people around you that this is the way to do it. So I think these are like some of the things. And also, like, the thing what we spoke about in the beginning, like goal setting and inspire and creating some kind of meaningful environment. It's
that
also
I think is very
job
important for a leader.
Sorry?
That I think is very important for a leader, to set goals and inspire and motivate the employees.
Yeah.
And also what you said about actually having a meaning and finding out why you're doing what you're doing. Because sometimes we're going on automatical thoughts, automatical behaviors that are not, we're not conscious about it. And when you're not conscious about something, you can't find out why you're doing something. That's my experience, at least in JCI and voluntary organizations when I was a leader, and and also now in everyday life. Actually, it's very important to ask those questions and find some answers.
Yeah, but then you get so much orientated, like,
definitely. But what has been your biggest challenge as a leader for you?
Well, I think when I've been working with some people and you had a really good relationship and they leave for whatever reason, that's been really sad for me. And also, like, on my personal level, when I'm just making my business as it is, I think one of the challenges that I've had is that I started to talk about digital leadership too early. Like, now newspapers are writing about it much more than they did a few years ago. So if I would like look back at myself, and when I'm older, I would say I was too early, and that was a challenge. And another thing, what else? I think, like, the way, like, I want to be kind in my relationships, so, and I think it's a benefit. I think it's good. But at the same time, I've also had some struggles just because I try to keep things in that way. And I have this quite entrepreneurial bug inside me, which I don't think I can ever take away. And it's an amazing asset. It's an amazing thing to have for yourself. But at the same time, if I'm put in an environment where I'm not allowed to develop that, I would feel like closed into a little shell. I think many people I heard this from people in an interview at Google headquarters, that Google, they employ entrepreneurs, but they just stay for a few years because they want to go out and do their own thing. So
that's very interesting.
yeah,
Who knows?
they definitely they are acquiring and buying so many companies, so they get the CEO from the old company into Google and try to fit them into the Google building, and it works for a few years, but then they move on. So on a personal level, you know, have that inside me, and then work in a large company. You are definitely contributing, and you love it because you become like an entrepreneur inside, an intrapreneur. And if you're allowed to evolve and develop, it's amazing. And then if not, you get really, I get quite sad when I'm not allowed to expand my own sort of ideas about how we can make the best for the organization and the people we are working with and the people we are serving.
Very interesting, and we're actually close to getting finished here. So before we finish, do you have any other kind of points you want to emphasize before we wrap this up?
Yeah, well, maybe I would like to end with that anyone can get involved in digital leadership. You don't have to have any certain education. You don't have to have a certain experience. It's for everyone, really. You know, all kind of industries, all kind of jobs, backgrounds, ages. It's possible to just get involved. And it's about using what you have now at the moment and expanding your understanding of the different elements that these all digital connections have brought to us in the last 50 years.
And that's a very good point, because that means that I hope that this interview actually emphasize and make people to be more proactive to use digital marketing, whether you have a business, whether you're a leader, or whether you're an employee or a family man, for example.
Yeah.
So thank you, Sofia, for this nice interview. Yeah, and I hope all the viewers have had some kind of learning experience there and can use it in their everyday leadership experience or as an entrepreneur. If you want to go to Sofie Sandell's services, you can go to sofiesandell.com, and I will put the link on this video down. And if you want to see my services in Mujic Consulting, you can go to mujicconsulting.no. Thank you very much, everybody.